Well, first of all, it's such a great pleasure to reconnect with Shirin and be here for this wonderful show. We knew each other in New York many years ago. And also, because today is an amazing day in Iran, we were gonna do her art first and then the political stuff, but we've changed it around because.
Yeah, actually, as we sit here, there's a revolution going on in Iran. For some of you may have been following the uprising within the last, I think we entered the 4th week. And today, despite all the brutality and the governments clashing with the people, a huge number of people are back on the street, and there is a real potential that they could dismantle the government. So we came from our place full of excitement, but a lot of anxiety, of course. And my own sister left a message saying it's total chaos in Iran, every city. And so it's just a tremendous inspiration to see the people of Iran, particularly the women of Iran, lead a revolution in this place of dictatorship. So there's hope, and it's really uplifting to see that there's hope and light at the end of this very
For those
dark
of you who
tunnel.
haven't been following the news, people, women especially, but everybody now, have been out in the streets about the major protests in Iran after Mahsa Amini, a young Kurdish woman visiting Tehran, died in the hands of the morality police. We're on track to get the same damn thing, for having her hair showing from under her hijab. And Mahsa was not Amin's actual name, it was Gina in Kurdish, because only Persian and Islamic names can be registered in Iran these days. Democracy Now! Had some poignant interviews about this yesterday with Nargis Baghjoli and Nilo Tabrisi. Is that vaguely right? So young Iranian women are tearing down posters of Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, burning their hijabs, cutting their hair publicly, saying, okay, if my hair bothers you, I'll get rid of it. The slogan is, I'm not going to pronounce this right, Zan Zandegi Azadi.
Zan Zandegi,
women, life, freedom.
Azadi. Yes. Woman, life and freedom.
I gather it includes queer rights, some of these protests, and was also used against ISIS, and in 2009 during the Green Movement for the reform of the Islamic Republic, whereas the current protests are demanding not a reform, but a whole new vision rather than reform. And of course, the struggle for bodily autonomy is going on here too, with the loss of reproductive rights, the lack of childcare, the threat to same-sex marriages, and so forth. So it's becoming a global battle for women, taking back control of our lives from the state. So that's, do you want more on that?
I'm sure we'll come back to it.
So back to the art and the show. This other part was much more exciting. Not than the show, but. So let's talk about your choice of New Mexico as a landscape parallel or a stand-in for Iran. It's a fascinating palimpsest rather than a collage. And this is your first project made entirely in the US. I know you were here for the Site Biennale in 1999, and I remember hearing you speak at the Art Institute. And of course, we knew each other in New York in the 80s when you were making the Hennaed Hands, which are predecessors of the work in this show. So I wasn't surprised by the ever-expansive directions you were taking into video and film, but it's been such fun to watch you mature, evolve, and rise. Everywhere your photo portraits are unique and immediately recognizable. Or, sorry, go ahead with that question, New Mexico.
There's so many ways to explain where and how I arrived with Land of Dreams, but picking up from Iran, I think there is an activist in every Iranian because of the life that we have lived, and I am a product of the Iranian Revolution and have been living in exile and have been separated from family for a very long time. So it's almost impossible for me to make art that is not without some relation to politics or social responsibility. And all of my work before The Land of Dreams really focused on Iran and the Middle East, mainly the question of women. And so being an Iranian woman who herself has lived a very complicated life, I raised a lot of questions that very specifically was about the Iranian society, and then once Egyptian society by making a film about Kulthum. But taking that further, after so many years that I haven't been able to go to Iran since 1996, that I felt that I reached an end of that state of nostalgia, and that I've lived in this country longer than actually my own country. And that for the first time I felt invested in the political conversation in this country and what was happening, and the image of America that I had originally when I moved here in 1975, and what America has transpired to be. So I think the combination of a personal exhaustion of living in exile away from Iran, but always being a storyteller about Iran, and this challenge that I wanted to give myself in terms of, would I be able to now rise above the occasion and give a narrative about America, an American portrait from my perspective as an Iranian-American immigrant. Would I be able to make art that still has resonance? And I really wasn't sure, because I've never filmed in the Western culture. I've mainly worked in Morocco, Turkey, Egypt, and so going quickly, I decided together with Roja Azari, who's my husband, who's here, and the cinematographer and my colleagues, that I would then focus on Land of Dreams being the identity of this country. It's kind of a parody of what we think about a country that welcomes the outsiders, a place of dreamers, and how that is shifting slightly. And my own obsession with dreams as well. And so, just to go back to New Mexico, we decided that we need to choose one state that will become the kind of a canvas of this conversation about America, as opposed to going all over the state. We traveled across the country, and we came to New Mexico, fell in love mainly for its landscape, which very much resembled Iran, but also its demographic. I wanted a state that had that kind of diversity of people, of different ethnicities, races, religions, languages, and here with the huge Hispanic immigrant communities, the large Native American community, and being a state that is not extremely wealthy. And
put it mildly.
To put it. So that was the reason we came. But then what became the thread of all of this was the idea of collecting American people's dreams. And my obsession with, I'm sorry I'm going on so long because it's been a few years of work, but is the idea that dreams, in my mind, embody many people's nightmares and fears. So if I had made videos like Roja and Sarah in this exhibition that was about my own nightmares and dreams, I wanted to see what Americans are dreaming about and fearing about. And so ultimately the photo installation became a portrait of America from the perspective of an Iranian.
Your photo portraits are always sort of instantly recognizable. They're so unlike the usual kind of self-conscious images. And in 2015, you had a series of portraits, and you titled it "The Home of My Eyes," which I love, because there's your eyes, and then there are all these other eyes there. The photographs are so compelling in part because their narratives are readable primarily through the subject's eyes and their half-hidden expressions. The New Mexico portraits cover our more than tricultural population, illuminated by the way you evoke a certain personal intensity or even intimacy, even though you've never seen these people before or after, that shines through the formality of the presentation. And can you describe the process of finding subjects? You hired a casting director?
Yeah, someone said something very interesting to me yesterday that I never thought about myself, is that my subjects are who, as if I'm looking for myself within other people's bodies and images and expressions. And in fact, even when I did self-portraiture, there were certain emotions that are very highly melancholic. They're exactly the same emotions as you see in these images of people from New Mexico. Home of My Eyes was in Azerbaijan. So I think it's about an artist transmitting her own anxieties, her own existential and political issues in her subjects, if that makes sense. It's like if you're writing a story and the story is not really about you, but you're embedded in that story, and all the characters of my films are about me. So to answer your question more clearly, what I think is very central to these images of Land of Dreams and The Home of My Eyes is the emotional intensity of these faces that unveil their humanity and sort of transcend all our differences as you're native, you're Hispanic, you're Iranian, you're white, you're black, you're this, you're that. And when you're faced with all these eyes that are looking at you, somehow you identify with them, and they don't become exotic other, you know. So it's really trying to extract emotions out of people's expressions. That is my job. But I think ultimately it's also about my own emotions being transferred to them.
They always look so serious and so intelligent.
Well,
and yet there's so much diversity. It's wonderful. Is it the question about their last dream, do you think, that brings all of this up?
I have to explain, because actually there's a few people here that worked with me on this project. So what happened was, we basically recruited for the photographs just local people from Albuquerque, Santa Fe, Las Vegas, Farmington. We set up shops at pizza parlors, hotels. We basically had a plan, a map of the kind of diversity of different gender, ages, economic class, functional, dysfunctional. And so basically, literally, we pulled people and we paid them some money. And just to explain about the photographs, and then I would bring them in, and they had no idea who I was. A lot of them were, homeless or mentally not there, but there were quite a few people who were fully functional, middle class. But I would show them my work and explain about where I come from, how I'm actually making a project about America, and it's about collecting their dreams. And would they be open to sharing their dreams? And then some people would say, no, absolutely not, I don't remember any, and some people would. And so this was the report for the subjects that we photographed.
And you also paid them something, which is important.
A lot of people came for the economic reasons. But there was some incredible bonding that happened. And then for the video, just like the character in the video, I went door to door. And I remember even once I knocked at the door and this woman opened the curtain, and meanwhile I kept all the Iranian men inside of the car. and I just went, hi, I'm an Iranian artist and I'm just doing a project, and I was just wondering if you let me come and explain it, maybe we can film in your house. Or it ended up that her husband came out and said, where are you from? Where? I said, from Iran. He said, I was in the military. I went to Iran. And I said, come on in. And next we were all inside their home, and they played in the film. They let us use their house. And we also were told, never approach the reservation. The natives don't like to be photographed or filmed. We went right to the reservations. I knocked at the door, and at one point nobody was coming out. I was leaving, and suddenly a gentleman came out, and I said, hi, they said, come on in. And next we made great friends with them, and we ended up working on the movie and the video and the photographs with them. So I have to say that I had an incredible human experience.
But in the film or the video, there's a Navajo couple who decides not to talk.
That's right.
And and it's the most amazing. You've seen the videos, I hope, and the film is even more so. Of course, many of those dreams are nightmares, and a lot of the dreams recounted in the film and the video are nightmares. And as Brandy says in her preface to the Radius book, because dreams are associated with the collective unconscious, they allow you to address provocative cross-cultural issues in a delicate and compelling way, which I think that's very nice. So, anyway, you said you'd like to be remembered as, quote, an artist who became a narrator of history in fictional form. And a lot of artists are interested in history, but they don't want to be narrators of history. They want to flash in and out of history, I think. And you had a goal of making a project that infused photography, video, and cinema all into one project. And it's different forms of storytelling, and Land of Dreams is that, right?
Yes.
It's the 2-channel video. Well, one of the things is, how do you manage the curious relationship between the Land of Dreams video and the film? I say curious because having seen them both at the same time, I can never remember which one I'm remembering. So everybody else. But I gather you were just intrigued about telling the story 2 different ways.
Yeah.
And it's as though the woman protagonist matures during this process. I mean, at first she's a student, and then she's a census worker, and the census is an authoritarian comment, I suspect, maybe on the Trump fundamentalism and so forth, but we won't get into that. So do you want to comment on any of that?
Yes, there's a lot there. Capturing history, I have to say that I never thought about myself as such that, but it was only when I look back retrospectively, for example, The Woman of Allah was about the religious fervor of the 1979 revolution. I made a movie called Woman Without Men, which was about the witch Roja Azari, which was called, which Woman Without Men was in 1953 when we had the coup d'etat by the American CIA, when it dismantled the democratically elected prime minister. So we had that. In 2009, we had the Green Movement, and I made the Book of Kings, which became a kind of a tribute to the sort of patriotism, the activism, that uprising. I made a Looking for Kulthum that would basically also touched on Egyptian history. And so I somehow gravitate toward history, but not in a documentary way, but more like fictionalizing history. And I think with the Land of Dreams, there has been a profound antagonism between US and Iran, I don't have to tell you, ever since 1953. And so there is this satirical, absurd look into, in this video about the colony that is this strange labyrinth of this very authoritarian, Kafkaesque space filled with men and women from Iran dressed in lab coats, busy looking at Americans' portraits and interpreting their dreams. In a space that is tucked inside of a mountain, a Shiprock, New Mexico. And yet, she, as this woman, has been like a spy or an agent, going to America and collecting people's dreams and photographs and bringing it back. But meanwhile, she herself, as a human being, as a person, which obviously is my own alter ego, she is conflicted between Iran and America, dream and reality, her own kind of haunted, traumatic past. So what I wanted to say that although on the surface my work seems like it's talking about history, it's dealing with religion, politics, it's deeply personal and very emotional. So in Land of Dreams as well, this woman, it's myself. It's really about me. That is obviously very strongly surrealistic and satirical video, but it's about how I always feel divided between the American culture, whom I love and worship, but dare to criticize. But also I'm from Iran, and I'm incredibly invested in the Iranian community. And the work, it becomes a conversation about humanity. It becomes about all of us. And so the more she collects American people's dreams, her enemies, the more emotionally she connects to them and understands that their anxieties, their fears of violence, of displacement, abandonment, and loss is exactly what she's feeling. And how dreams cross borders, And so I think the Land of Dreams is really me finally making peace with America and saying, I'm American. I'm American, and they say, you can take an Iranian out of Iran, but you can never take Iran out of an Iranian.
But
so this work is still Iranian, but I'm also American.
At one point you said that you were emotionally Iranian, but your character is very American and very Western, and that you're always serving 2 audiences.
Yes, I mean, in some ways, I am like every one of those women on the streets of Tehran. I'm actually pretty strong and tough and you know, very rebellious in many ways and fearless, but I'm also, you know, extremely vulnerable and emotional and fragile. And I think I have taken all of my inspirations from Iranian women, the poets, the writers, everyone. And so in that way, I come from that history of feminism that is deeply Iranian. It doesn't come from a Western tradition of feminism. I strongly believe that. And I'm very proud of being a woman. But in terms of my independence and my refusal to compromise and accept authority telling me how to behave and how to dress, I'm definitely very American in that way.
Or feminist.
A feminist.
The use of collage and fragmentation is obviously like dreams as well, and they're sort of gates and doors as portals to another reality. Can you, do the two-channel video have anything to do with this kind of, and also the division of your divided citizenship, the divisions between genders, and especially in Iran, I think, you said serving two audiences and something lost in translation. Does the form of the two-channel video have to do with that?
And for some of you may know my work, everything has always been constituted around the idea of opposites. And I always thought it would be very interesting for the audience to be seated in front of two videos. One is taking place in Iran, one in America, one in open landscape, one in a claustrophobic interior dark space. One mostly about reality, one about dream. One, and the only thing that is common is this woman that goes in both channels. And you, as the audience, have to edit the video. You cannot possibly watch both things at the same time. So you need to use your imagination to put the dots together, you know, and decide, you know, who is saying what and who is right, who is wrong, and what is she thinking, what is she feeling? Is she entering the dream or is she keeping distance? Where is a moment we're in a dream? Where is a moment we're in reality? So I pass it on to you because, again, that's the beauty of dreams, because there's all these references to reality, but nothing makes sense, right? So I give you a lot of handles, and this is what I love about art, because it gives you that kind of freedom. And in terms of the photographic installation, yes, all the subjects are, you know, American, of different backgrounds, but the text is Farsi language. Of course, you don't know what they are, but it's suggestive that that aspect of the work, it's about me. It's about me finding a union with my subjects, and it's my handwriting and two of my friends here. And basically, I think it's important for some of my friends to know that the text, the ones that are bolder white writings, the logos are the first, last name, place of birth, and the date of birth of the subjects. And then those who didn't share their dreams. And the smaller writings are taken from a very ancient book from 13th century from Iran that it only exists in the library in Tehran, that we photographed page by page and recreated it also in the video, but are loosely interpretations of dreams, if I could just say that. And so to me, that's a kind of this fusion between, you know, these people who gave me their bodies and their expressions, and this is my handwriting and my culture meeting somewhere in between.
I think it's pretty obvious that you're a longtime feminist, and also that feminism takes very different paths in different cultures. You've said you were frustrated by Western readings of your work that emphasize women's repression, when your intention was to show that, quote, women are constantly rebellious, defiant, or breaking the rules. And you mentioned the eroticism of veils, Iran's fondness for walls and privacy, as being something that we obviously don't get. Do you want to expand on that?
Yes, I mean, it's been my frustration because every single work that I've made to this date, whether it's a photograph, a video, or a movie, the characters have been female, but they have been repressed, but they've never been victims, they've never been losers, they've always been defiant, they've always been outcasts, but they've always looked for an idea of freedom. They've been the most victorious. If you think about the video Turbulent, some of you may have seen, or Rapture, who was shown here in 1999, Louise showed it here. where the woman left on a boat in infinity, in the water, in the ocean, where the men stayed in the fortress. They've always repeatedly, symbolically suggested that yes, the women of Iran are repressed, but no, they're not losers. They're extremely defiant, and all you have to do is look at today's images, and that's proving my point. And I was always frustrated because every media journalist that they talk to me, they always say, "Oh, we feel so much, we feel so sorry for the women of Iran," all of that. And I was just like, I really refuse to hear that, because that's just not what we think of ourselves, And look, they succeeded to be the first ones in the world to make the revolution. So yes, maybe I am feminist or not, but I'm always really focusing on the fact that the women of Iran have been historically defiant and resilient.
And Simin, the protagonist of The Land of Dreams, both the video and the film, she's Simin in both of them, a conflicted art student and then a census worker, is consistently composed and self-assured and very interior. I mean, you have to really think about what is she thinking now and what is she doing now. But she's very independent. And she only betrays her anxiety in private. Like this fascinating business of recapitulating some of the interviews that she's done with makeup and costume and so on, and then translating into Farsi and sending it off to Iran.
She's talking about the movie now. The character of Simin, by the way, the same actress who is in the video, is in the movie, she basically is a projection of myself in the way that, there's always this duality of something extremely private, individual, and my own personal sorrow and traumas of political traumas that I've had to go through. And yet I've never been interested in making work that is about me or making work that is autobiographical. So how do you balance, being open to your own emotions as a human being and your own vulnerability on the most existential level, and yet also be an artist, be a storyteller, be someone who talks to the people about the people and becomes a communicator about issues that are very important. And that's been my challenge. And so when we made the script with Roja and the videos, it was all about that and how to create a character that shows this dichotomy between someone who's battling with her own issues as a human being, for sure, both in the video and in the film, and yet is able to take us into the story that tells us about a bigger story that is not about her. It's about a country. It's about other people. It's about other people's pain and suffering. It's not just about her. And that's been my interest even in the photographs or the videos that I've made. It's always about how to balance deeply personal issues with deeply political issues that are historical and that are above and beyond my own little minuscule of existence. And that's been my approach. And I think that's why the work has a lot of emotions, because I'm a very emotional person. I'm a woman. So it has a very feminine voice, I would say. It's very beautiful because I like beautiful things. It has a lot of music. I like music. I like to move people. And that's art made by a woman. I don't know if that makes it any difference, but so there's a lot of me in the work.
Well, in the video, Simin resists an all-male court, and in the film, she has these two would-be lovers and threatening panel of bosses, an Iranian patriarch, and in her sole diatribe, she defies a sexist Christian cult leader. I love that when she usually she's very quiet and very self-possessed, and she really takes off in that scene where she gets this guy.
Now you don't have to see the movie anymore. Yes.
And the colony is a mysterious part of the story. It's obviously about patriarchy in Iran and the authoritarian census and the parallel fundamentalism, as I said, of the Trump administration. And your own father, or Simin's own father, appears.
Is executed.
Yeah, and that whole, the colony part is very mysterious.
Well, we carefully worked with Shoja and Jean-Claude Carrier, who's an amazing scriptwriter, French, who worked with Benoit, who sadly passed away before he was French, before the film was finished. The point is that in the video, we have the colony, and that's where Iran lays. In the movie, there is an Iranian colony that she's taken to, and it's really, it could be a creation, a figment of her imagination. I don't want to tell you the story, or it could be something that, because the film is so much about the Census Bureau and it's a conspiracy against
a CIA
yeah,
kind of
yeah.
thing.
But really, the model that we used is we have so many Iranian people living in diaspora that are now reaching age 70s, 80s, and they're still hoping to overthrow the Iranian government. And they're still like living in colonies, and they're actually funded by American government. So we created this satirical, absurd colony where all these people in their old age are still getting trained in the military to overthrow the Iranian government. And I just want to share with you, in fact, if in case we don't talk about it, we shot that in New Mexico in a village that American military is trained to invade Afghanistan, the Taliban's. So in fact, it was not being used at the time. So and they've created a mosque, a bazaar, all these adobe little things. And it was incredibly ironic to recreate.
Where is this place?
It's in the border of, is Jen here, the production manager of the film, is on the border of Mexico, Texas, and New Mexico. It's way out of nowhere. And you go and it's only a huge amount of surveillance because it's really for the military. And they allowed us to pay the money.
And the military
and
still owns this place?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, it's rented to them.
Yeah.
But the worst part is that we couldn't find enough Iranians in the New Mexico to play the old Iranians. So I became one of the Revolutionary Guard. and I had
I didn't notice that.
Oh, yeah. And so I was actually one, and Shoja played one. And we actually had to improvise also because we shot the film during the pandemic. So it was just incredibly, but to answer your question, yes, in the movie, Simin's father is been executed by the government, and that she has had to flee with her mother, the story of many of us, and so she never, suddenly she sees in this colony a photograph of her own father, meaning that he belonged to that party. And so we went through a lot of extent to recreate in a very absurd and satirical way a colony that sort of talks about the Iranians who are living in diaspora and are still hoping of a change of the government.
Well, maybe it's coming.
And it could be today. Not by those old people, I tell you, by very young people, 16 to 22.
I want to talk more then about landscape, because that's one of my favorite fields, and place and displacement and so forth, and the relationship between the landscape and these socio-political issues. I love the images of the lone woman wandering in the desert near water. Sometimes she's got a double, there's an old lady. I mean, there's so many in the various films, I'm not going to remember which one I'm talking about. And is she lost, or is she finding herself? And there's one quote, I think it comes out of the colony scene. Have you heard the nightingale who cannot find her nest flying in the night, dark night? I think it's a beautiful, where does that come from? And is that?
Shoja, can you answer that? Where did you get that poem from? Oh, he wrote it.
Oh, you wrote it.
You're going to see Shoja later at the Q&A. You can interrogate him.
No,
I mean, first of all, Lucy, I'm so glad you brought it up. I mean, again, we're giving away some about the film, but there is an image at the very end of the movie that, to me, it summarizes everything about the Land of Dreams that I've meant to do. At the very end, and by the way, as she said, it's the very first time that I do a project that collapses in 3 different mediums, photography, video, and the movie, and under the same idea. And so Simin, collecting people's dreams, for the census and being conflicted between her own nightmares and Americans' nightmares, and discovering the conspiracies and the corruption within the American government. At the end, she reaches a point where she goes to the desert and places all the photographs of her own family one by one.
In a spiral.
In a spiral manner. And then the American people's photographs, portraits of people that she had shot. To me, that's the very heart and the core of the meaning of the film. That at the end, Simin, both in the video and in the movie, comes to the realization that we're all the same. We are all the same. And the faces of humanity in this landscape of the desert in New Mexico, and the drone going, and the faces become smaller and smaller. We're just small little pieces of soil or sand in this planet, and we're all conditioned to different form of tyranny and pain. But human experience, it's so similar, like our dreams are, and that's why I went after dreams, because that one, it's really so much crossing the borders. And I think that image, which, by the way, we made direct reference to land art of Smithson, to,
yes,
I mean, a lot of, the film constantly pays tribute to other artists like Cindy Sherman, to Kara Walker, to Buñuel, and so it's really, to me, is the poetry and the symbolism at play, saying that this young woman, this old lady, discovered at the end that it really doesn't matter where you come from, that we're all the same, and we're all, and may I add to it, making this film during the pandemic, which was so global, it became even more poignant in the way that, disease don't discriminate, pain doesn't discriminate, suffering, it does not discriminate. We all, and whether you're from Ukraine or Iran or Somalia or New Mexico, we're all, conditioned to a certain amount of suffering. And what art can do is perhaps bring us together in some ways to realize. And that I want to say something, and it's really tremendous. Within the last 4 weeks, there's been uprising. We have seen the role and importance of artists as the voices of this movement, which is unbelievable. I don't know if some of you have known, there's some Iranian people in this room. There's a young man, I think 20-something, Shirin Neshat, who simply sat in his room in Iran and wrote a song and sang and put it in social media. It's become a national anthem today in Iran, and millions of people have shared it. And it just so much touched the nerve on people's emotions and what is happening to them in Iran. They arrested him and later released him. But people like myself, I had work in London at the Piccadilly Square, or filmmakers, poets, photographers, painters, graphic artists, creating images, everything they could that echoes and communicates about what is going on in Iran. And it's so powerful to see the people of Iran who have no support for art and their artists are the most significant communicators to them and to the world. And I wish in this country we will see the same thing, that the artists would be the one that would be the most inspirational and the ones that provoke and mobilize.
There's so many artists trying to do that. I mean, my community is those artists and so on, but
that sense, I'm very proud to
tough,
be Iranian.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to say that everyone is speaking about, our artists are leading. And I was like, how is that? The woman and the artist. That works for me.
So that's all the questions I had. Do you want
to? I just can't tell you. We are sitting here with such high emotions. Honestly, Shoja, Feridun, can you, Feridun and Fahime and Shoja, stand up? The people from Feridun wouldn't, he's too shy. He's over there. Fahime, can you stand up? These are the, Feridun, can you stand up for 2 seconds? Shoja. Feridun and Fahime helped me with the calligraphy for years and years. They're artists themselves. And Shoja, who is the love of my life, but also the huge collaborator and the co-director, co-writer of all the films. And our life since 4 weeks ago has not been the same. We have not done anything but really just every step of the way following what's going on and helping the Iranian people by interviews and whatever to spread the word and going to protests. We went to one of the largest protests in Los Angeles, I believe 50,000 people.
Wow, really?
And today there was one in New York, everywhere. So we've been very active, and I just want to say thank you for sharing this day with us, as it's extremely important historical and emotional day for Iranian people.
And one thing that's very clear is that that people who are protesting with Iran and with Iranians are going against our government, which thinks Iran is the enemy, apparently, no matter who we have as president. So it's really very meaningful, more so for you, but also for us. So.
I'm really happy to be in New Mexico because the last thing I know they want us to stop is that I've made a very strong bonding with New Mexico, and this is the state that made me realize that I don't always have to feel like I have to be with Iranian people to feel safe or secure. That here I felt like I was so welcomed, and for the first time I felt that, you know, particularly with other minorities, that I had so much in common, and we have, you know, it really made me feel that, regain that faith in this country and its welcoming identity, and that I feel that I too need to fight for this country as much as my own country in regaining what is essentially American. And so New Mexico, I think, represents the best of everything that I find about America. And Shoja and I have been thinking about moving here. So. Anyway, thank you for being so present and supporting, and also all the people who are here who, I'm going to name them later in the movie, but who have helped me with this project. And Luis, Brandy, everyone inside Santa Fe, I have never seen this work look better than here. And Caroline, Luz from Gladstone, they have been so behind me. Any kind of crazy artwork I've made, they were behind me. And just thank you all for being so supportive and being behind artists. Thanks.
Thank you.